Abigail, the brand new horror comedy. In this video we'll be diving into its deeper themes and symbolism. We'll be thinking about the horror of Ballet, we'll be thinking about the vampire mythos, we'll be thinking about Parenthood. It's a journey that will take us into some disturbing places, so hold on tight. The creature that we would now recognise as a vampire really began to take shape in the 18th and 19th centuries, culminating with the definitive vampire story, Bram Stoker's Dracula, in 1897. This was adapted into a play in 1924, which in turn was adapted into a movie in 1931, which was followed by a sequel in 1936 called Dracula's Daughter, and that was apparently very loosely based on some bonus material written by Bram Stoker himself, published within a 1914 short story called Dracula's Guest. So now, 2024, we have Abigail, a reimagining of the Dracula's Daughter story. We're going to enter spoiler territory. Abigail is about the machinations of a revered crime lord called Christophe Lazare. We only encounter him right at the end of the movie. He's a vampire, and he says that he has been known by many names throughout history, heavily implying that he is Dracula, but he doesn't need to spell it out. We see him walk into the room with his cloak and his fangs and his desire to drink blood, and we just know it's Dracula, the endlessly readapted creature of the night. In this particular adaptation, he's a crime lord living in the modern day, and he has a macabre way of dealing with his enemies. He gets them trapped inside his mansion alongside his vampire daughter, Abigail, and she tears them to shreds.
What can I say? I like playing with my food.
The first victim is the driver, Dean, convincingly played by the actor Angus Cloud, who very sadly died in 2023. The film is dedicated to him. His character is a prankster, and he gets decapitated. Grisly stuff. This is Lazare's hallmark way of dealing with his enemies. The others discover the body in horror, noting that it resembles an animal attack. And that's truer than they realise. Deception is a crucial theme in the film. When we first meet her, Abigail is an innocent-looking 12-year-old ballet dancer, and a group of criminals are tasked with kidnapping her for 24 hours by a man called Lambert. The hope is that her wealthy father will pay the ransom to set her free, and the criminals will get handsomely paid at the end of it, $7 million each. Simple. But remember, this is a film from the team behind Ready or Not, Scream 5 and Scream 6, directors Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett, with writer Guy Busick, this time collaborating with Stephen Shields, and these guys love to subvert power dynamics in their storytelling. Predator and prey swap places. To begin with, we're rooting for Abigail, obviously, and it's incredibly uncomfortable to watch her get kidnapped by these criminals. But Abigail is not the innocent young girl that she seems.
Joey?
Yeah.
I'm sorry about what's gonna happen to you.
What's really going on is that Lambert is working for Lazare, he's a victim of Lazare, and the 6 criminals he enlisted to kidnap Abigail are people Lazare wants dead. They thought they had her in captivity, really she has them in captivity, and it's a bloodbath. It's not just Abigail who's a deceiver. The criminals each have something to hide. Joey stands out as the one who is most interested in honesty. She's the only one who wins the trust of Rickles, a Marine sniper. They plan to work together, but then Rickles becomes Abigail's second victim. For simplicity, I will continue to refer to these characters by the aliases that they are given by Lambert. Something that fascinates me about the film is the use of dance. Abigail is an accomplished ballet dancer, but that's not merely part of her young girl act. It's something she continues to do even in full vampire mode. It's amazing how easy it is to turn dance into something creepy, especially ballet. Something about how precarious and precise it is. It keeps coming up in the horror genre, from Suspiria to The Black Swan to Us. Like many art forms, ballet exists on the border between order and chaos, and it doesn't take much to tip it over into chaos. The use of Tchaikovsky's music from Swan Lake throughout the film is especially relevant because in the Swan Lake story, an evil sorcerer called Baron von Rothbart transforms his own daughter, Odile, into an imposter, an imitator of the Swan Queen. As for Abigail, she's a daughter who becomes an imposter too. She has been posing as a young girl and devouring her father's enemies in order to win his love. And that's her emotional vulnerability. When she dances, she's not just showing off. There's a sense of longing, a sense in which she really is a scared young girl wanting to be loved. Well, she's centuries old, but in vampire terms, she is Dracula's daughter. The lonely quality of her dance is shown throughout the movie, from the empty auditorium at the start, to the scene in which she dances with the headless corpse of Dean. And the only other person who dances in the movie like she can is someone under her control. Sammy, the computer hacker of the group. She gets bitten by Abigail, and she becomes a puppet under Abigail's control. There's a striking moment where Abigail's ballet moves are replicated by Sammy's body, a perverse duo, dancing perfectly in sync, but in separate rooms. The other person who gets made into a vampire is Frank, the former NYPD detective. Lambert offers to turn him so that the two of them can fight Abigail. Frank accepts the offer, but the new surge of power reveals his true selfish heart. He drives a stake through Lambert. He wants to take control. In a telling moment, he sings his own rendition of the song He's Got the Whole World in His Hands. It's a worship song. We used to sing it at school. And it's directed towards God. But instead, Frank applies it to himself. He sings, I've got the whole world in my hands. He now regards himself as God. And just as Abigail turns Sammy into her puppet, he wants to turn Joey into his puppet and make her kill her own son. He even manages to bite Joey, but then he is defeated with the help of Abigail and a stake through his heart. With his death, Joey is delivered from the vampire curse. Apparently it takes a long time to learn how to do all the cool vampire stuff, like making other people into puppets. So Frank's arrogance is the death of him. Part of the fun of vampire stories is working out which bits of the vampire mythos will be taken seriously. And this is most urgent when you're trying to work out how to kill one.
We kidnapped a vampire! A ballerina vampire?
Okay. What do we know about vampires?
That they're not real.
What are we talking about? Like an Anne Rice or True Blood? You know, Twilight? Very different kind of vampires.
In this film, several traditional methods are put forward, as we shall see. Because in stories, vampirism exists in the overlap between the medical and the spiritual. There's debate about whether it's a disease or a manifestation of evil, or both. And this is perhaps why garlic was once upon a time suggested as a possible means of killing vampires. It contains an antibiotic called allicin. So if vampirism is a medical condition, a blood disease, it makes sense to try a medical solution. But in this film, garlic is useless against Abigail. So what's next? Well, Peter, the mob enforcer, he has a small metal crucifix around his neck. Might this religious symbol prove effective against the vampire? Well, traditionally so. And this is to do with what the cross represents. Whatever you make of Christianity, vampire films by their nature invite us to consider these religious themes. And Jesus Christ went to the cross to pour out his own blood in self-sacrifice. He tells his followers to remember him until he returns through communion, the bread and the wine. The wine represents the blood of Jesus, the blood that he poured out. So that's interesting, isn't it? His followers drink his blood. So why do I mention this? Well, the way of the vampire is an inversion of the way of Jesus. Jesus shed his own blood voluntarily. Vampires feed on our blood parasitically. So that's why down through the ages people have suggested that a crucifix might repel a vampire. The way of the cross is diametrically opposed to these bloodsuckers of the night. Now, in Abigail, Peter's metal crucifix doesn't achieve anything. Abigail even uses it to stab Peter. Does that mean that the film is denouncing the power of the cross? Maybe, but not necessarily. In The Exorcist, the demon Pazuzu is powerful enough to resist the effects of a crucifix, but ultimately the self-sacrificial power of Christ prevails in that story. And that's the point. We'd expect the true power to be in Christ himself, not in the religious objects. And I think we'll see in the story of Abigail that there is a hint of good conquering evil, even amidst the filmmaker's desires to blur the morality and wrong-foot the audience. So we eventually discover that Abigail has two main weaknesses. One is medical, she's affected by tranquilizers. The other, it seems, is supernatural, sunlight. It burns through her, and that is of course in keeping with the traditional vampire mythos. Many spiritualities are about pursuing the coexistence of light and darkness, but in this film there's a sense of light conquering darkness. As for the other vampires in the film, Sammy is quite literally exploded by reflected sunlight. Lambert and Frank are exploded by stakes driven through them. So that's another traditional way of killing a vampire that's respected in the film, stake through the heart. But it's difficult to achieve because the vampires are supernaturally strong. All the characters in the film are addicted to something. In the case of the vampires, they're addicted to human blood. And the criminals have various addictions. Joey herself is a disgraced former army medic, a recovering junkie who has estranged her son. She is the one who is tasked with checking on Abigail, and the two develop something of an understanding, culminating with Abigail standing up for Joey in front of her father. He allows Joey to leave, but he tells her to do so quickly because it's almost dinner time. The dysfunction of Abigail's relationship with her father seems to galvanise Joey's own maternal instincts throughout the film. She wants to be a better mother to her son. In the midst of the turmoil, she leaves him a voice message, explaining that she loves him, and that he's the one good thing she did in life. And at the end of the film, she drives off to be with him. His name is Caleb, which means faithful. In the biblical book of Numbers, Caleb is one of the spies who brings back fruit from the promised land, a symbol of flourishing, calling the people home. And this is echoed by the Caleb of the film. He represents the greater goodness that Joey is called to, the bonds of family and homeland. As she leaves, she allows herself a lollipop, something that recovering addicts tend to avoid because it can re-trigger the spiral of addiction. Perhaps the implication is that Joey has been refined through this ordeal, and now she is able to practice self-control. The events of the film, terrible though they are, have made her a better mother. It's not exactly a happy ending. The murderess Abigail and her father aren't brought to justice, but there is some sense of light overcoming darkness, the possibility of redemption. It is Joey's protective maternal instinct that is celebrated and strengthened. Well, thanks so much for watching. On this channel I talk about the deeper meaning of movies. If you'd like to get access to a growing archive of bonus content and even contribute to the writing of these videos, as well as supporting the channel, go to patreon.com/Thomas Thorogood. Do subscribe if you'd like to stay in the loop, and I will see you soon.